Garmagut, Can Corla. First of all, I want to say that I'm supporting this bill, and in fairness to Richard and Michael and Matty, and they have engaged, and I think that Ed Honan has to be commended for the amount of work he has put in, and also commended as one of the people that asked the questions when he was working down the road. There's a lot of people didn't ask. I think he has to be commended for that. That wasn't a rubber stamp job in a lot of occasions. I think that, and Brian Riley, I think, needs a mention as well, that would be with him. But I'm actually shocked that the government is going against this. And, you know, I listened to the Minister's speech where he talked about the dangers of not being able to get money. The bottom line on it is, if you own a company and you're borrowing for a company, same risk is there. Companies can get money, no problem. So, like, this kite that's flowing about the dangers of getting finance isn't there. And second of all, there's a strategic fund that a government can back, and they have it for, in fairness, for the agricultural sector to help. But the problem is, Minister, and nobody seems to get this, that whether you're a company or whether you're an individual or whether you're a farmer or whether we've seen it during when unfortunately the country hit trouble, there's people in different walks of life and can go through financial pressures or can basically be in financial stress. And you need solutions for that, because somebody in financial stress, first of all, they find it very hard to get out of it. Second of all, the big problem is of getting money from the other bank or getting some money when you try and do a deal. And what has happened is, and I think this needs to be understood, for the investment funds that had a lot of money, they went, and we call them vulture funds, they went and they bought all these loans of the banks, and it was like watching a person grow up, because every day that it happened, if you had money in a bank, they'd be charging you interest. But every day, as the years went by, this was growing, both in interest and both in value, because thankfully land has gone up in value. So they were there smiling, and the person was still left in distress. And a lot of these loans, or a lot of these debts, were bought at between 30 and 50%. And it was all right for them to have it at that. But the person that was trying, and I talk about people that's trying to make sure that they get back on the road again, they weren't listening to them. They weren't even interested in talking to them. You could have 40 meetings, and it was basically full duck or no dinner. They had to get everything or nothing. And it was a huge problem. And I do acknowledge the likes of David Hall as well, in the line of housing, all the work he has done. And he helps a lot of people in different parts of the country. I do acknowledge the likes of Keith Farry, who has done on the, and you mentioned it, Minister, on the insolvency side. I do acknowledge those people for the amount of work they've done. But I think that this bill as well is a no-brainer to put in, because at the end of the day, we need farmers to be able to go forward. We also need, and you know, we see it in companies. Company closes down, another company down the road to set up. We've seen it with the building. How many builders have basically been in serious bother and they're back building again, and they can get money because once the slate is cleaned and once you're able to put a business case forward, you get money. But the problem for those people, they're in the credit bureau, they come up obviously, and they cannot get money even if they were trying to get a deal. And that's a major problem. It's leaving them with no side to go other than family members or something like that. And we need to make sure that we give them this basically new lease of life, and for their families and for their communities. And like, it is very sickening for someone that a debt was bought at maybe 50%, we'll say, of what it was, and still they keep trying to knock the last bit of, basically the last pound of flesh out of them. And that's ferociously hard to understand. Also, we've seen situations, Minister, and I think that if you look at the bill about making sure the family home is looked after as well, where you'd see there could be siblings or there could be partners or whatever, and if their name isn't down on that, they don't seem to have any rights, and that's a major problem in different parts. And thankfully, you know, bit by bit, and you know, around the country, the likes of the people I've mentioned before, and indeed a lot of TDs, have engaged and tried to help people resolve the difficulties and the issues around the country. But there's still plenty of it out there, and there's, you know, still a lot of families don't know what's going to happen or where they'll be because they find it hard to get a deal over the line. And funnily enough, I'd say that 4 or 5 years ago it was nearly easier to get a deal, because now as things, look at the country is probably going better and the price of things were going up, and as things get more expensive, they're not worried about doing a deal quick. And then there's interest going on, and then there's basically fees going on, and then in some cases you'll see a receiver appointed, and they're a huge price on top of it. And like, we have to solve the problems, because when you see these people and when you talk to them, be it a house or be it a business or be it a farm, when they get a resolution to it, and I've seen so many of them, it's like a new lease of life to them. It's like a load off their back, and on top of that, a lot of these people go forward and contribute a lot to basically a country or a society, and that's what we need for a society to be prosperous. And I would have urged the government to look at this and basically take it on board, because I think, you know, we're dealing with someone that wrote something that has a fair legal brain, in my opinion, to put it very mildly, and a person that has put in hours and hours, in fairness to Ed Honahan, putting this together. And I think as politicians, we shouldn't be just going on the side of basically big business all the time, to put it very simple. We should be looking at the small people, because funnily enough, it's a lot of small people around this country that contribute the taxes, and ironically enough, the same people that are holding this state in the vultures are the ones that don't have to pay taxes. So it's a rather unusual sort of set-up. I think that we should be coming more, the first thing you should do is look after the people that in our right around our country, because if you get a prosperous community going, if you get a prosperous society going, there's less pull in on a government, because if someone is struggling, they will need more help from the state always, and that's plain to be seen. So I would urge the government to take on board what we have said here, and give another prong of solving the likes of those problems, give another side of it, as well as the insolvency, and I agree that big work has been done there, and the other people that's doing it out there, like David Hall and those that have done so much. Like, we have on one side a vulture funds, and this is what we have to get into our heads. We have vulture funds that are going for the last penny, and as things go up they'll stick tighter, and then you have the likes of, be it iCare or other crowds, that will buy it out, and at any time if that person gets up and running, I think it's something like 5 or 6%, they can buy the house back at what was paid for it, not twice the price or whatever. And there's this big sort of, it's nearly like redacted information, it is redacted, of what they gave for that debt, and then that's how they're making their money, that's how they're basically every year making huge profits. And I think we should make sure that we help the people as best as possible. And thanks, Lascan Corda.